Hey everybody, thanks for checking out my top 10 Dandy moments. Just so you guys know, if you're not caught up and you haven't seen the season 2 finale, please catch up first because I will be talking about things that happened in that finale. I've seen the whole series, so I'm going to be going through a lot of different stuff, and I don't want to, of course, spoil anything that you guys might not have already seen. So if you're not caught up on the season 2 finale, please go check that out first before going throughout the rest of this video. But to get straight to the list, number 10, one of my top 10 moments in Space Dandy was definitely the epic rock concert that we got with Johnny and Dandy just trying to outstage each other. It was one of my favorites, and the reason is my number 10 is because something that really comes along with that is not just the fact that it was a really cool concert, it actually looked cool, and it was also really funny. They actually had that real song, and honestly, I did not expect them to have a real song by the end of this episode. I thought maybe they just got really famous and it would be like a silly Space Dandy thing where they just got really famous even though they didn't have a full song or anything like that. But we got to hear most of the song, and then of course it actually played at the end. But we got the cool song, we got them trying to outstage each other, and then when Danny actually set his hair on fire, that was really funny. And then of course lightning strikes and the whole thing just blows up. It was just a really great concert. It was actually cool to watch, but it was also really, really funny. And we also got a song, so it had like three separate things in there that really make it one of my favorite moments of the series. Number 9 is the high school episode. That entire thing, and this is something that was initially in my honorable mentions, but it moved around, and the main reason that it ends up on my list is because of the end of the episode when the girl with the glasses actually does end up singing. That is honestly one of my favorite moments in all of Space Dandy, and it was just an amazing scene in that episode to me. Like, I love the episode in general because I think it's the most reference-filled episode, and that was initially why it was even thought of in my head as far as being on this list as an honorable mention. But then I thought about it, like I go back to that episode, honestly, just to see her part and also to watch their training part because I actually really like the song in that part as well. But those two moments are like my top two in that episode, and then just all the little references. I actually go around just to listen to the silly references and also to see the part where Dandy first runs into the girl and the really funny face he makes. There are just a lot of different little bits and pieces in that episode that really make it worth going back to over and over again. And the music is, like I said, it's definitely my favorite part, her singing, and that is the big thing that really takes me back is watching them do the silly training montage and then kind of fast forwarding through to the end to watch her sing. Number 8 is the episode where we get to see Meow's home planet. Like, Meow's home planet was really cool. It was mostly the episode itself that I really enjoyed, and it was because it focused on Meow. Like, we only have that episode that really focuses on what Meow used to do and what his family life used to be like and what it's like now since he left his home. And that was just a really good episode. Like, the premise was mostly that they ended up stuck there for who knows how long, and they were too dumb to actually figure it out. But the serious side of that episode was actually really good. I really enjoyed it, and we got to learn some stuff about Meow, and he even had like a little love story section that ended up like blowing up in his face, and it was really funny. But it was just a really cool episode, and I really enjoyed getting to learn more about Meow and seeing his home life and stuff like that. So that was definitely one of my favorite moments because we got to see, even though it was a tiny little bit throughout the entire series, it was something we got to see of Meow and learn about his family, and I just really enjoyed that. It was a cool change of pace because it was one of the slower episodes, especially towards the middle of it where they were really trying to figure out what's going on, and Meow decided, like, we're trapped here, I might as well really get to like work with my father again and make things better compared to when I left home. So it was really cool. It was sort of a real story to that episode as well. So that was really cool getting to see his home planet and sort of getting a bit of his backstory. Number 7, and this is one of the more recent episodes, and it's one that it was really, really hard for me to figure out where to put this, as well as the stuff with Meow's homeworld. It's Dandy in the Afterlife, the episode, and I believe it's A World with No Sadness. He dies in the episode, and we kind of have to figure out whether or not he's really dead or alive, and they tell him he's dead really early on, so we kind of know, but with it being Space Dandy, for me, I was like, I wasn't sure if he was dead or not. I was like, maybe he's just on a planet called Purgatory or something like that. But it was one of those episodes that it doesn't really blow me away. It didn't, even when I watched it. There were some really big moments, and I think one of the big things is, of course, the ending song, because it was one of the unique song endings, and also the part with the girl with the guitar. I think a lot of people love that scene as well, because that was a really cool little section with music. But it's one that sticks out in my mind because it's just one that makes you think. Like, they die in a bunch of episodes, but that's the one where he already died and we got to see him in the afterlife. And so it was something that, even though it had its funny moments, because of course it's Space Dandy, it's one that really sticks out in my mind because it makes you think. And even in the end of the episode, he really had the option to basically be reborn and go back and live his life, and he chose to stay in purgatory. So it was something that in that episode, it just really stood out to me. Like, this episode could have ended, like, he could have experienced purgatory and then gone back to being with QT and Meow, but instead he decided to stay dead. And he comes down in like the trolley, and he's, or not a trolley, I can't think of, the train car, I guess that's wrong too, but he comes down in the thing, and he's in the suit, and the girl meets him, and so does the, I guess, sort of the demon guy that kind of helped him realize he was dead, and they all kind of just go off. And it was something that just, it really stood out to me in that episode. And like I said, I don't, like, it's not one that I really go back to just rewatch, except for like the music moments, but it was something that really stuck out because it just made me think. Like, all the episodes, like I mentioned, where he dies or they turn into zombies or something like that, I don't really think about that because they don't dramatize it, or dramatize it. I don't dramatize isn't a word, but they don't make it dramatic or anything like they did in that episode. And it was something that just really got me. Like, by the end, it was just like, man, it just made you think. Like, he had the option to, like I said, really come back to life, and he chose to stay in purgatory and chose to stay dead. And just, once he accepted it, it was a world with no sadness for him. So it was something that just really caught my attention. And like I said, even though I don't actually go back to that episode over and over again like I might a funny moment or a musical moment, it really sticks in my head because it's one of the more serious moments, especially involving death in the Space Dandy series. Number 6, and this is in the very last episode, and this was something that it's sort of biased for me because it was something I talked about multiple times in some of my old reviews for Space Dandy. It's that the alternate timelines actually mattered in, by the end of this series, or at least by the end of season 2, hopefully not series. But it was really cool to get that. And it wasn't, like, part of it was that I was right, because I always had this suspicion with all these different death episodes and all these weird things happening that there were multiple timelines. And I mentioned this in my last review for the season 2 finale. But, that happening over and over again, it made me think about it. And then in the season finale, they basically make it that it's like all those different things really did happen. We saw multiple timelines of Dandy either living out a random adventure or dying by the end of an adventure. And the thing that also makes it really cool to me is that even though it involved me kind of being right about something I was just speculating on, the big thing that makes it so great is that it actually didn't need to be there. Like, it could have been, the whole Pionium thing could have still been in the story, and Danny didn't have to have multiple, be able to go through multiple timelines or anything like that. It could have just been, he's like full of Pionium or whatever, and the Gold Empire wants him, and then the crew goes to save him, and he sacrificed himself by the end of the episode. That could have literally been the entire story, and it would have been fine, because it was really the only story-based episode in the entire series. And that would have been a great story. It would have been a great ending to his character. But it's like they added in extra elements, and they were like all these episodes that seem like they kind of don't mean anything except, it's either funny or it's one of the drama episodes. They actually all matter, because even though he might not know they happened, we know that they all happened. So it was just really cool that they made it a part of the story, even though technically, like I said, it could have just been they went to rescue him and he sacrificed himself at the end of the series type of episode. It could have been just like that, and it still would have been a beautiful episode. But they made it a part of it that every single thing actually mattered. The alternate Dandies matter, the all the death episodes still matter. So that just, it was really amazing to get that, and it was just really cool to have that for the series. And with the way they ended it, they could still keep going. So it was just a really great part that they didn't need to do for us, but I think they did it because they knew like this would just make it better for viewers. All that stuff matters, so it was just really cool to have that. Number 5, and this is something that I know a lot of you guys will agree on. You might even put it way higher on your list, but it was the very first emotional episode that we got, and it was really early on in season 1, and it was just a great episode. Dandy and the little girl, she lost her grandfather, I believe it was, and so Dandy was bonding with her and stuff, and that was also the very first episode where we got, Dandy music, I guess, and it was just really good. We got 2 songs in that because we had the first part where they're bonding and stuff, and that was a really nice emotional scene, and she's kind of, it starts off where they're kind of split apart, and then they really bond by the end of that song. And then they have the moment when he actually goes out on his own, and they have a brand new song that plays, and it's him doing everything he can for this little girl to help her find her grandfather. And it was the episode where I think myself, as well as a lot of you guys, it was just like, out of nowhere, Dandy can be real, and it can be whatever the writers want it to be. It can be as emotional as like Cowboy Bebop or something if they want it to be, which same thing could be said for that. It's typically really silly, but by the end of Cowboy Bebop, it's just like drama and seriousness, and it's just really emotional. And that's what they did in that episode of Space Dandy, and it was just really great. And like I said, aside from the music, the emotions were good, but you include that in there as well, it just makes the episode even better because it was like I said, our first taste of unique Dandy music. And I believe both those songs were made for Space Dandy. I don't actually know because some of the songs they used are just like brand new songs that are like just released in Japan. Like in the surfing episode, that was a brand new song. You couldn't find that for months, even after that episode on YouTube. You couldn't find that full song. It took forever for me to find the real name of that. But that first emotional episode was definitely something to look back on, and it's just like it was the first moment where it was like, this show can really be way more than comedy, and when it wants to be, it will really hit you if in that drama department. So it was really great, and I just love that moment in Space Dandy. After that, it was another really emotional part, and it's number 4, and that was the episode where they actually found the dog that was meant to be launched in space, and the dog actually dying in that episode was very emotional. And it was one of the most serious moments in Space Dandy, and that's why it's ranked above even the episode where they show Dandy in the afterlife, is because that was a really serious moment. Like they were, they bonded with that dog, and it was just like, losing a real dog. Like even Meow, even though he was like, because he was like the cat, he hated the dog the whole time, and then when the dog passed away because it was, sick, he was really upset by it, and it was just a really powerful moment in the episode. And like the entire second half was sheer comedy with like the alien fleas and stuff, but the dog moment, which was like really the first half of that episode, was just true emotion, and it was once again one of those really dramatic moments, and it really stuck with me because it was just like, this junk is just really sad. It's not like fantasy sad, it was just like a dog died, and it was just real serious, and it was sad, and it sticks with you. And something like that just happening in Space Dandy, it's one of those unique moments where it deserves to be on like a top 10 list because it's so dramatic, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it just hits you like that. Number 3 is once again another dramatic moment. Like once I was getting up there, was like a lot of the drama moments start to stick out, but number 3 is sort of a mix of comedy and action as well as drama. It was actually the QT based episode, which was the season 1 finale, and we had the Meow based episode, which I really enjoyed, and then by the end of that season we got to see QT have his own special episode, and he got a really special one because it was actually the season finale of season 1, and that episode kind of had it all. Like the ending scene was like a giant epic fight scene where he was like a million times bigger than he normally would be, and he was in a giant epic mech fight. The animation looked amazing in that, but the story of the episode was QT and love, and it was just a really cool episode where sadly at the end, even after everything he'd done, the I believe she was a coffee pot or something like that, a coffee machine. She'd only seen him as just a friend, and it was like that's kind of messed up. Like it was almost like it was like a really good sort of love movie where the main character doesn't end up with the love interest. It's not a romantic comedy. It's just a romantic movie, and then sadly he doesn't get to be with the girl in the end, even after he nearly dies in like this epic battle. So that was just a really great episode. It was, once again, one of the emotional ones, and it was a support character base. Even though he's of course one of the top three, it's mostly all about Dandy. So that was the one we got where it was really focused on QT, and like I said, they really went all out. Like the one with Meow, it really like the main focus was to sort of give his backstory, but all three of the Dandy crew were in that episode for a lot of it. And with the QT one, I feel like QT was really in that mostly, like 75%, even more than that maybe, was really just QT falling in love with, this other robot. So it was really cool. It was really focused on QT, and then, like I said, we got the super epic battle at the end that looked really great, and they just went all out in that first season finale, and it was a great episode, combined with it being sort of a support character specific episode. So I really love that one. It stands out. Number two, and this will really lighten the mood for you guys, the Michael Dandy thing. That's what I'm just gonna call him. But the Michael Jackson Dandy from the season 2 premiere is the funniest thing I've just ever experienced in Space Dandy. Like if I did a top 10 funny moments, I definitely have some others that just instantly pop to mind. But number one, as far as comedy goes, so it's number 2 on my entire list, is the Michael Dandy thing. Like just the sound effects he does when he's sounding like Michael Jackson. Even before that, when he's just talking, like the animation on the character is funny. I believe it's a reference to a Super Milk Chan I was reading, something like that, and it's even drawn by the actual artist. So he's like the shonen manga style version of Dandy, and it was just really freaking funny. And like the animation and the voice when he's like flips his glasses up, and just everything about him was really funny. And then he's flying on, of course, like a Nimbus cloud and shooting at the guys while doing the Michael Jackson, I guess grunts. Really, I was gonna say sound effects, but I don't really know what to call them. But it was just really funny. It's like the funniest thing ever, and I can rewatch that a million times over. And I do, like, I go back to that episode, and I'll watch some other stuff, but really, it's just to see him. It's like I'll watch the part when they meet the first Dandy, just because I kind of like to go in order with it sometimes, and I see them encounter them and kind of get beat up. But the Michael Jackson Dandy stuff was, it is the funniest thing that I've seen in all of Space Dandy. It's like my favorite funny moment. It's always there, and it's always just like a 10 for me. It's just funny, like every time. It's hilarious. So that's why that's number 2. It's just my favorite funny moment in the entire series. Now, before I get to my number 1, which I think a lot of you might be able to guess, I'm going to do a couple honorable mentions. These aren't in any sort of order except for the last one, and the only reason it's the last is because I kind of want to save it to talk about it for last. But as far as my honorable mentions go, the dancing episode I really enjoyed. I wanted to put it on my top 10, but I just didn't know where to put it, and it was like a lot of the emotional stuff is really why some of the things on my honorable mentions list are honorable mentions, because it was like they're just emotional, so it kind of like beats out some of the funny moments, except for my favorite funny thing. But the dancing episode was just great. It had really funny moments. I really enjoyed the music. Like I went back for the music a lot in that one, and just the character designs, like them dancing and stuff. Like all the songs, I think really it is the music for that episode. That's why it's an honorable mention for me. I love the song that they use. It's just called, I think it's like Space Dandy Rock or something like that. Or it might just be called Space Dandy, but it's the song they use in the very beginning and the song that they use for that actual ending. I love that song. I love the one that they use when they're actually dancing. And then just the comedy of it, like Dandy dancing with like Ton Travolta, of course, which was really silly. And especially the part when the old guy grabs Dandy's butt. That's probably my favorite part of the episode, even though I love the music. So honorable mention for that. Another, and this was one I hadn't even thought about until I was kind of going through my list, is actually the Redline parody episode. And this episode is when they, for you guys who don't remember, it's when they were racing through space. It was like like the space race is great, baby, or something like that. But that episode was just a parody of the anime film Redline, and I mentioned this in that review. The whole thing was just Redline in dandy form, and it was great because of it. And I was like, just watching it, I was like, this is Redline, and that's all it needed to be, because that movie is honestly a slightly more serious version of Space Dandy, but the race itself is just as unbelievably ridiculous as we see in the Space Dandy episode. And even the ending is actually less ridiculous than Space Dandy, but it's still unbelievable and it's crazy. But like it was such a great thing that I saw that movie. And for people who didn't see the anime film, it was probably just a really funny racing episode where people kind of compared it to like Speed Racer probably. But it was just an unbelievable episode because I saw the film, so I knew all the references and stuff. And the main character in Redline and looks just like Space Dandy. Like Dandy looks just like that guy, at least very similar. They both actually have pompadour, so it's just like it made it even better. And I'll even put a link to that review just so you guys can actually see the thumbnail. And it's just those two guys next to each other, and they just look alike. So that's why it's an honorable mention, because I saw the movie, and it was just like that's all I think about, and that was kind of the point of the episode. My next one is Dandy restarting the universe in the season 2 finale. That was going to be on my list, but it's, of course, it can't be anything but the most important thing that's ever happened in Space Dandy, because it's the universe restarting. But for me, it's not in my top 10 because, the emotional stuff or the really funny stuff. And it was really funny, like him saying, like, I'm out, and he kicks the chair, and like he turns down being God to restart the universe. But it just doesn't really, like, I know it's not going to just hit me over and over like, man, that was such an amazing thing, but it's definitely worth mentioning because how could you not? It's him restarting the entire universe. And then my last honorable mention falls along the same lines, like you can't possibly not mention it. It's the first time they die. And the reason this isn't on my list is because, once again, it doesn't really stand out. And even though it technically does count with the whole timelines mattering stuff, the reason it's on here, at least as an honorable mention, is because this wasn't just like, oh, this happened in like episode 4 or 5, so it's like that silly non-canon episode. Like, if it was like a Simpsons Halloween horror episode, none of those really count as far as actual Simpsons years. So, none of those characters really die or anything. But this was Space Dandy, and so it kind of mattered. And not only that, this was the first episode of Space Dandy, and they all died. They blew up on a planet and died in the first episode. So the first death has much more significance than it would in any other show where it's just a comedy show. It's like, oh, they died in like episode 12. They died in episode 1, and that's how it ended. And then it was like to be continued, and then episode 2 was something different. So that's, you just can't not put that on the list somewhere at least. Like, it's the first time they die, and it's actually in the first episode. That's what really makes it so crucial. But my number one thing, my top Dandy moment throughout all of Space Dandy, is the entire episode of Lovers Are Trendy, baby. Now, I don't think I need to say why that was why it's the biggest moment in Space Dandy, like, as far as, I'm concerned at least. But the episode, along with just being an emotional episode, it starts off fairly funny. It's just like, the two people who aren't really going to get along. Scarlet needs to hire Dandy, and she does, as her fake boyfriend. And they form a really serious connection by the end of the episode, and everyone, I think, wanted them to end up together. And this wasn't a show where I personally, I tend not to ship characters in general, but especially not a show like this where I just saw the girls as like they were just the other two characters. Like, they round out the main character cast. It's like 5 main characters. It's Dandy, QT, Meow, then Scarlet and Honey are like the other two. So it was just like, oh, cool, we get an episode with Scarlet, because I always love the other episodes where, we get the support characters, of course. So the episodes focusing on Scarlet or Honey, those are really cool. So I thought it was just going to be like that, and it would be cool to learn more about Scarlet a little bit. And then it was just like, by the end, it was just incredibly powerful. So it's number one. It's hard to explain why it was so amazing. Like, I can refer you guys to my review that I did for it, but I think you already know. Like, it was just it was just something about it. It was just amazing. Like, the emotions behind it, even though it wasn't like sad emotions or anything like some of the other episodes. I think that's why it kind of stands out because it made us so hopeful for something that we probably never even thought of. Like I'm sure some of you guys did, where before the show even came out, you were trying to ship like either Dandy with Honey or Dandy with Scarlet. But this episode, I think, whether you like to ship characters or not, kind of forced you to be like, I want them together because they just worked by the end. And then it had like amazing music, like the song Scarlet put on when she plays the record in the bar is probably like I think that automatically became my favorite song, and it's probably because it was during such a pivotal moment in the episode, or probably the pivotal moment when Dandy realized like I can't just let this go, and he was gonna go and be with Scarlet. But the entire episode was just unbelievable, and of course by the end, there's nothing you could want more than those two characters to end up together. But it was a great episode. It had great music, and it was just a great love story that, once again, sort of in Dandy fashion, didn't really work out. Like QT, Dandy, and Meow have all had their love moments. Like in each of the episodes, like the one with Meow, he had the moment where I said it kind of blew up, and his was funny. With QT, it was a bit more dramatic, and then with Dandy, I feel like it was even more dramatic, and I think it's just the way they did it. Like QT, you know, QT's was sort of like you could sort of see because the girl always said like, "Oh, you're such a great friend." She never it was never vague with her. It was always like she said friend all the time. And then with Scarlet, it was always really vague. Like she could just not really care about this guy, but at the same time, with some of the scenes they show, like she doesn't say it, but they show it, so it kind of made it more impactful. So those are my top 10 moments. Of course, put your top 10 down below, and so I can see what you guys think. Do your top 10 moments kind of coincide with mine, or do they coincide with other people who might possibly comment down below? Thanks for watching this. I know it's a super long video. I tend to do that when I get my top 10s. I'm also going to be doing another top 10 list for Space Dandy, and instead of top 10 moments, it's actually going to be just the top 10 things in Space Dandy in general. So to be more vague, it won't just be like, oh, this specific episode or anything like that. It'll be more like the music in general is one of my favorite things, or like the action, as small as it might be one of my top 10 things in Space Dandy as a whole. So please check that out once I upload it. I'm gonna end up filming that right after I film this, so if this is already up and you're watching it, I'm probably working on my top 10 things list right now. I'm probably editing and putting in pictures of that too. But thanks for watching this. Please check that one out. Like I said, put your top 10 list below. Thanks.